Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Asia Corinne McGee. I'm a personal brand strategist, coach, speaker, and owner of Asia Corinne the Brands LLC. I am so pleased to serve as your moderator for today. Named in honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Walker's legacy was created with the mission to cultivate an ecosystem of access designed to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's legacy by joining us online at www.walkerslegacy.com. The Cowork and Connect virtual morning chat series is aimed to learn the best practices for remote work, the importance of mentoring, staying sharp while staying in, financial planning for small businesses, and self-care routine tips during this time of quarantine and social distancing. So let's get started with today's program. Today's guest is Dinai Yelverton. Dinai began her career as an auditor for KPMG. She quickly realized that the lifestyle and demands of an auditor was not a great career fit. In 2016, after a couple of career pivots, she launched Undeniable Events, now the Uday Agency, LLC, a boutique experiential events planning and marketing agency in Chicago, where her focus lies on bringing community together through curated experiences. Dinai has produced events for private, corporate, nonprofit, and sports entities, and currently serves on the board of WISE Chicago, that's Women in Sports and Events, as the events chair. A former blogger and digital magazine contributor, Dinai shared her journey as a young mother in both her personal blog, The Young Working Mommies, and The Glue, formerly Chicago Woman magazine. After a successful 7-year run, she retired the blog and launched Mommies and Mixers, an annual event hosted in Chicago and DC, supporting women and families experiencing homelessness. Her agency's latest project, the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign, is a mobile tour that launched in August 2020, and it's bringing free vision care to kids in underserved communities amidst COVID-19. Please help me to welcome Dinai Yelverton.
Hi, thank you, Asia.
You are so welcome. Hey, Dinai.
Hey, you made me sound kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. I know it's always crazy to be on the side getting your bio read, but yes, that's you, and you are legit. So we are so excited to hear from you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here with everyone, so excited to be a part of Walker's legacy, and I'm ready.
I love it. So I learned today, actually, for the first time when reading your bio, that you actually had a career as a public accountant. So I want you to walk us a little bit through your career trajectory from your time in corporate to now being a full-time entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I have not had a traditional career trajectory, as you can see. So I graduated from Hampton with my MBA with a concentration in accounting. And so I started my career as a public accountant with KPMG. I was an external auditor. I walked into KPMG 2 months pregnant. So that kind of helped set the pace a little bit and the tone of just how demanding the job was, and just it just wasn't a good fit for me. So I was there for about a year. Left KPMG, had my daughter, took some time off, actually moved out of the city for a little bit. Upon coming back to Chicago, I actually got a job with AAR, which is a global aviation aftermarket company. Okay. So basically overhaul, repair of aircraft, defense aircraft, commercial aircraft. I have no idea how I ended up in the aviation space, but started with AAR as an internal auditor. It was just an easy pivot. It was something that I had already done. It was on my resume. And so I got the job as an internal auditor and was in that role for about 2 years before pivoting out of that. At the time, I was planting little seeds at the company, letting them know like, hey, I'm good at this, or I really love planning events. And so I would volunteer with events around the company, the holiday events, or anytime the CEO had something going on, I was the first to raise my hand and say, hey, I'll do it, just to kind of show my skill set and show what I was really good in. I got to a point where I convinced them to create a role for me outside of audit.
I love
And yeah, I was the digital specialist. And so I was helping to conceptualize their social media strategy. And Asia, as you know, that is your wheelhouse, but creating messaging for a B2B company where you repair aircraft is a little challenging. And so I did that for a little bit, and then got promoted to corporate communications manager, where I was really in charge of the messaging for the company, internal communications, communicating with our employees, assisting with a rebrand strategy that they had going on during that time. But all in all, I still was not fulfilled.
Yeah.
I was not happy. I did not feel like I was operating in my purpose. And so in March of 2016, I was pregnant with my second child. I actually left and decided to focus on creating my events planning company and really putting all of my time and energy into something that I was really passionate about. So it's been a very interesting journey. Yeah. The skill sets that I have are super transferable, but yeah, public accounting to digital strategist to corporate communications to event planner.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that you really paid attention to the shifts that you were feeling personally, because sometimes we stay stuck in careers even when we have a great skill set, but it's not fulfilling us. There's no passion, really attached to it. And, I know what you do today is very driven in the social lane and social entrepreneurship. So for everybody that is joining us, the topic of today's conversation is how COVID forced Dinai to focus on impact versus income. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, that shift from, you going to working a job, even becoming an entrepreneur. And for some, that may seem like the glorious stage, but you still felt like that's not it. And then you took another shift. So talk me through those triggers.
Yeah, so I think with any entrepreneur, when you are first getting out there, your main thing is, how do I make money? How do I get my name out here? How do I, educate people on what it is that I do? How do I build this business, right? And I had that same mindset of, I need to make money. At that time, like I said, I was 3 months pregnant with my son. I already had a daughter. We had just got a house. So all of these things were happening. And so I was focused on making money, and I was taking events and taking clients that I typically would not have. I went into event planning saying that I didn't want to be a wedding planner. My first year of launching, that's all I did was weddings. And I had to really take a step back and ask myself, am I operating in my purpose? Even though I'm doing something that I absolutely love, am I doing what I'm really, really good at? And so you do have to kind of take a step back and realize and understand what it is that you really want to do, and where can your skill sets be best used. And so it wasn't weddings. And that was a hard thing to accept, because I think sometimes we have this idea of what entrepreneurship is, or for me, what an event planner was. And I'm seeing all these things on social, and I'm like, I need to be like her, or I need to plan events like this. And that just wasn't true for me. And so I kept finding myself wanting to do events that were focused around uplifting community and doing things that really inspired other women and business owners, moms, whatever it was. I had this yearning to tell my story and to inspire others. And so I initially launched Mommies and Mixers, like you mentioned. And at first it was like, okay, I want to do this brunch, real cute. And, I can decorate.
Real cute.
Thank you. But again, my heart was just drawn to, how is this event helping someone else? It is cute and that's great, but what is the bigger picture? What are we doing here? And so I decided to partner with organizations in Chicago and DC that supported women and families that were experiencing homelessness. And so now it was like, hey, yes, we're coming out, we're going to get together, we're going to sip on these mimosas, but we're also going to do something that is going to impact lives. And so bring diapers, bring wipes, bring clothes, bring formula, so that these things can then be, given to individuals that need it. And so I began to create events around bringing community together. And it's difficult because my husband jokes all the time. He was like, well, maybe you should have just been a nonprofit. I'm like, well, no, it's not what I wanted to do. I still want to be a for-profit business that, is successful. I didn't quit my job not to be successful. But my heart has always been in the community. Even as a child, my mother always instilled in us giving back and supporting others. And so it's in my DNA to do that. The challenge was figuring out, how do I intertwine that into my business, into a for-profit business? And that's when I began to focus more so on social impact. So I categorize myself as a social entrepreneur. And so really, like I said, I'm a for-profit business, but a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the events that I do are focused on uplifting community, giving back to the community, and supporting the community the best way that I can.
You even did something for All-Star Weekend this year, right?
I did. So it was a dream of mine to work with All-Star Weekend. When I found out they were coming to Chicago, I'm like, I'm an event planner. I have to figure this out one way or another. And so the NPA actually contracted me to help produce a breakfast for minority-owned businesses here in Chicago. And so it was a private event hosted by the NBA. They had some speakers that come in to basically talk to entrepreneurs and business owners about how we can secure larger contracts and just making sure that we are positioning ourselves to compete with the rest of the world. Yeah. A lot of times we don't have those opportunities. I think what the NBA did was amazing, just in terms of providing these resources during All-Star Week. You wouldn't even think that something like that was going on because, people are partying and there's so many fun activities going on. But I really appreciate the fact that, they reached out to me and I was able to help produce that event. I think we had over like 100 business owners at that breakfast. So it was amazing.
Okay, so we definitely have to take a pause there. We cannot gloss over that. You just said the NBA contacted me. The NBA reached out to me, and I think it's very interesting that the topic of conversation at that brunch was helping businesses of color to be better positioned to receive those larger contracts. And I think that's very valuable. If you could just share a few things with the community today about how to position yourself to work with that larger company, because that is huge.
Yeah, thank you, Asia. It is. The first thing is really taking inventory of yourself and of your business, whether you're an entrepreneur or you work in the public or private sector. Like, really take inventory of what it is you are really, really good at and what areas you really need help in, and then figuring out how can you get the support to strengthen those areas. And so for me, excuse me, I had been going to different events and got in contact with this organization here in Chicago. And we had a meeting and I was telling them, hey, this is a goal of mine. And literally from that conversation, she put me in contact with someone else. And so networks are important. I'll tell you now, as an introvert, as someone who is not as social as I would like to be, it can be very uncomfortable at times. That networking can be very uncomfortable, but find a way for it to work for you. For me, I know one-on-one, that works for me. If I can sit down in your face and talk to you, and I don't have the pressure of having to work a room or, drum up conversation, that works for me. So figure out what works for you. Where are your strengths? And then figure out where those gaps lie. For me personally, I have been operating as a sole proprietor up until most recently. And getting the contract with the NBA really showed me where there were some gaps. I got the contract, obviously, but of course they were asking questions like, well, are you a certified minority-owned business? Are you a certified women-owned business? And it's like, well, yes, I am, but I haven't gone through the proper channels to get the certifications. And so it opened my eyes to the things that I didn't have in place and the things that I needed to work on, as well as the business entity. It wasn't categorized in the right way. I should be operating as an LLC, not a sole proprietor. And so I was able to understand that, hey, I've been doing this for 4 years, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And you have to be honest with yourself. And sometimes it's painful, and you look back like, dang, did I waste time? Did I mess up stuff? Did I miss out on opportunities? But you got to just keep going and figuring out, okay, from here, where do I go? How do I get better? What people do I need to surround myself with? There's this saying where you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, and I totally agree with that. How am I learning from other people? What am I gaining from other people? You know, making sure that you have people on your team that are way smarter than you. It's important. It's very important.
Yes, I want to dig a little deeper and talk about these shifts that you had to go through, because it seems like you had to make a lot of changes really fast. Like, opportunities were coming to you and they were exposing those gaps. And so you had to adjust, but you kept it moving. And we know that is evidenced by the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign this year. But let's talk about, your shifts that you had to go through mentally, like anything otherwise. One of the things you pointed out is you said, be around people, that are better than you, that are smarter than you. That takes you to have a certain level of confidence, or even, humility, and to lose the ego. So we want to hear about the shift from solopreneur to business owner.
Absolutely. So aside from actually setting up my business correctly, it really took a lot of soul searching. I think COVID allowed me the space and time to really sit down and be still and be quiet, and do a lot of things that I otherwise didn't have time to do, like read or pray, and really figure out, what is God calling me to do? I know everyone's walk is different and things of that nature, but it really took a divine intervention for me to sit down and be still. And that's difficult, especially when you're an entrepreneur and you need to make money. I need to be out here. I need to plan events, but if I'm not operating correctly, if I'm not operating in my purpose, none of that would even matter. And I found myself just doing things that ultimately didn't matter, or doing things that seemed like they were good, but they weren't good for me. And so I think sometimes you really have to figure out your direction and where you're trying to take your business or your career. And it really requires that you have that alone time, that you have those difficult conversations with yourself. For me, I knew that I was lacking in confidence. I knew that I wasn't charging what I was worth. I knew that I was taking events or taking clients that were safe. I was playing it safe because I was comfortable. And COVID completely pushed me out of that. For a while, and a lot of times that happens with all of us. We get comfortable, we get complacent. It's like, oh, I can do this. But if you're trying to reach a whole nother level, if you're trying to create legacy, if you're trying to build a business, you really have to have those hard conversations with yourself and figure out, what do I need to do? And for me, it was that confidence. It was getting people out of my ear. It was, not basing what I do on what someone else was doing. That imposter syndrome is real, and I am a victim. Okay. So it takes a lot of self-reflection, I would say, to really sit down and figure out what to do. And for me, that shift happened during COVID, because like I said, I had a lot of downtime. I had nothing but time. Events were canceled. I couldn't plan events. We couldn't gather. And so I had to figure out what to do. You can't just say, you know what, I'm done. You got to figure it out.
So I believe the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign was in the works prior to COVID. Am I correct?
It was. So so I have been planning the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign for the last year and a half. And it was slated to launch this summer.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign is a mobile tour where we are going around providing free vision services to underserved kids in select neighborhoods in Chicago. And so the idea was that I was going to get this vehicle, tour around to various neighborhoods, bring these services to African American and Hispanic communities free of charge. And again, like I said, this was in the works prior to COVID. once COVID hit, I automatically just put a stop button. I was like, oh, this isn't going to happen. There's no way I could ever do this just because of the climate, the health climate that our country was in. However, after speaking to a number of individuals, a number of organizations, I realized that the health climate that we were in did not change the fact that there were still kids on the south and west sides of Chicago that needed vision health services. And if anything, they needed it more now, especially with remote learning and them not having access to get to their doctor. A lot of times these kids are getting the services at school. Well, schools are closed. And so it really forced me to say, you know what, I need to figure out a way to make this work. Even in the midst of COVID, I had to completely change the direction of the campaign. I had sponsors pull out literally 2 weeks before we launched. It was crazy. But I had to figure out a way to do this because it was a need. And then going back to just me being so ingrained in the community and being a social entrepreneur, I had to figure it out. And so that's what I'm doing. The campaign is currently still running. It was supposed to end in September, but we have a couple more stops. But that's what you do as a business owner. You pivot, you figure out things, you make it work. And like I said, it was needed more now, probably than before. I think before I was just like, oh, this is going to be so cool and people are going to love it. But when COVID hit, it was like, no, this is needed. These kids need these services.
Yeah. So I know that you're a mommy, and so mommies and mixers, I understand. How did the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign come about, and what really compelled you to choose that cause to back through your business?
Yeah. So I get this question all the time. It's interesting because I'm not an optometrist. It is the furthest thing from anything I would have ever done. And what I tell everyone else is that honestly, this was a vision that God placed on my heart. Call it what you may. I literally remember being in my house. I was sweeping. It was in 2018. And I was like, oh, a 2020 vision tour. That'll be so cool in the year 2020, and left it like that. Like, oh, that'll be a cool idea. Yeah. And I just dismissed it, completely dismissed it. But it was something that kept creeping up on me. And I'm just like, why am I constantly thinking about this? Like, this sounds crazy. There is no way I could pull this off. Like, I'm one person. Okay, I have 2 kids. I'm talking about getting a vehicle and touring Chicago. I know nothing about mobile tours. I know nothing about eye care. It just, to me, it just seemed much bigger than anything I could do. But again, it was just something that I just was so drawn to. And so I started doing research and found out that there was huge disparities in the African-American and Hispanic communities. I started realizing that there were companies that had mobile vision clinics. There were companies that do mobile dental clinics. And so it started to feel more realistic. And it felt like this was something that I could actually do. And so once I get a hold of something, once my mind is made up on something, like, it's no pulling me back from it. And so once I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing, I'm like, we're going to have to figure this out one way or another. And it's been a lot of just ups and downs over the last year and a half. Again, from sponsors pulling out to COVID happening to, I could go on and on of just like how crazy the journey has been. But long story short, I really feel like that time that I had to sit by myself and to pray and to really take that self-inventory, it allowed me to hear God on a much different level and allow me to really tap into what it is he was calling me to do. Because I would have never told myself to do that. I would have never said, Dinai, you should get a bus and give free vision screenings to people. Like, where did that come from? And so that quiet time, that self-inventory that I was able to take at the beginning of the pandemic and the quarantine really allowed me to really figure out, okay, this is what I'm being led to do right now. Let's put some things in place and figure out how we can make this work.
So a lot of crazy stuff over the past year and a half, yet somehow you're about to go on a second leg of the tour. So talk to us a little bit about what has happened since launch, you know, who's been impacted, some of the highlights, and really the momentum that's behind the campaign.
Yes, it's stressful. So I initially, before COVID, actually, it was going to be a 3-month tour. Like I was like, oh, we're going to do a 3-month tour. I didn't know what I was talking about. And then once COVID hit, I was like, you know what, let me dial this back a little bit. Let's do 10 stops. Once the sponsor pulled out, I was like, okay, let's do 5. And so the plan was, okay, we're going to do these 5 stops. We're going to do it from August to September. Boom, we're going to be done. I could not have imagined the response that I got from the tour. It was incredible, to the point of overwhelming for someone who is an introvert. I'm still processing it all. But it was very overwhelming. I mean, from TV and media just covering it, ABC, WGN, NBC, like it was just like, wow, I never would have thought it would have gotten so much coverage. Thanks to you, Asia. And so after that, you know, people were like, hey, can you come to my health fair? Hey, can you come to my event? Or, hey, we're doing something in October. Can you come to that? And so it's been a struggle. I actually had this conversation with my husband a couple of days ago of really trying to figure out what the next step is. I don't know if I mentioned, but this campaign has been completely funded through crowdfunding, through friends and family, because again, my sponsor pulled out. And so from a financial standpoint, I'm just trying to make sure I'm making the correct decisions. But again, when people call and say, hey, we need these services in our community, It's like, what do? You know what I mean? And so we have agreed to 2 more stops. And on the back end, I'm just doing the work that I can to make sure that we can financially support that, because these services are completely free to the community, completely free to the families. I don't charge anyone when I bring this van out to them, but there are a ton of costs on my end that I am absorbing. And so it's just one of those things where you have to balance the impact versus the income, and making wise decisions when it comes to situations like that. And I think a lot of social entrepreneurs, a lot of social impact companies are probably going through the same thing, where it's like your business model is to support the community and to support causes that mean a lot to you. Well, what do you do when the funding isn't there? And so that's the struggle. That's the dilemma that I'm currently facing.
And it's so okay to still be working through things. I mean, this year presented a lot of curveballs that impacted everybody, not only from the, business side, but from the life side as well. And so I just want to commend you for just staying committed to the mission, even when sponsors were pulling out. A lot of people would have been like, I'm not funding this, I'm not doing this. And you literally put yourself out there. And so I want to ask you, how can we support the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign? But I also want to open up the chat for audience questions, and we'll be taking those in a minute. So how can people support this effort?
Sure. So you could go to our website, perfectvisioncampaign.com. There is a donate button if you feel so led. You can support that way. I'm always looking for optometrists to volunteer their time at the tour stops. I've been blessed to have worked with some amazing doctors here in Chicago, but I'm always open. I don't want to burn out my volunteers. And so that's the main thing, the doctors and the funding. If you are in Chicago, I know people are tuning in from everywhere, but if you are in Chicago and you have an organization or a community-led organization that would be interested in these services, please shoot me an email, hello@perfectvisioncampaign.com. And like I said, just check out our website, check out our social media. It's the same Perfect Vision Campaign.
Yeah. So the tour stop, what does it look like? You have the optometrist, and then, how are the youth service?
Yeah. So they come on, they get a free vision screening. If they fail the vision screening, our doctors then provide resources for them to follow up to get a comprehensive eye exam. VSP Eyes of Hope has donated gift certificates. So any family that is uninsured can get a free comprehensive eye exam and glasses at no cost to them. again, if they are uninsured, and you have to go to a VSP network doctor. All of the doctors that I've been using are VSP network doctors, and so there's no issue there. But just making sure that we're following up to make sure that these kids are actually getting the help that they need. It's so astonishing that majority of the kids that come through the tour stops, they're failing the vision screenings. The last tour stop that we did, we saw 16 kids, only one passed. So it is critical. It's important. I think sometimes we overlook the importance of vision health. And I can go on and on about that because it leads to so many other different things that I've learned just while producing this campaign. Like I said, I've gotten so ingrained in just the research and the numbers behind it, but it's incredibly important, incredibly important.
So we talked a lot about the impact. I want to shift a little bit to the income because one of the things we talked about is that undeniable events is no more. And now you're shifting into an agency model. So can you talk a little bit about how your entrepreneurship has evolved in the creation of the agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, COVID again, just really forcing me to figure out what direction I wanted to go in. I think I got a little scared. I'm not even going to lie with you. When COVID hit and all of the events that I was planning or planning to plan came to a complete halt, I was like, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my business? What does this mean for the industry, right? And I think everyone kind of got a little like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? There's so much uncertainty, even still. And so I realized that a lot of the work that I do is not just events. Yes, I'm an event planner, but at the base of it, there's so many other things that I do, from fundraising to producing campaigns. And so I wanted to create a company or evolve my company that really mirrored what I was good at and some of the things that I am already doing. I think sometimes we don't necessarily know what we're good at because we just do it, and it comes natural to us. And so I had to kind of sit down and say, okay, this is actually a strong suit here. This is something that's marketable. This is something that I can use for clients. It's not just, hey, I'm gonna show up and plan your event, but I'm really strong in ideation. I have ideas for days. I'm really strong in strategy. I'm really strong in execution. And so the idea from shifting from undeniable events, where it was just purely events, to the agency is just kind of increasing those service offerings to clients, and using my skill sets and the transferable skills that I've gained over the years to better position myself, especially since in-person events is just not, it's not what's going on right now. And so I've had to evolve. I like I said, I couldn't just say, well, that's it. Undeniable events, event planning is done for me. I had to pivot. I had to figure out a way to still grow this company and figure out, okay, what skill sets can I still offer to my clients that aren't just solely focused on the event planning and event execution.
Yes. I love it, Dinai. I want to close talking about your entrepreneurial lessons. For those that are interested in entrepreneurship, and we have that phrase, hindsight is always 20/20. But when an experienced person is able to sit before you and provide some wisdom, you can have some foresight. So, what are some of your greatest entrepreneurial lessons that can help our community today as they navigate transitions due to COVID, just transitions due to pursuing passion and creating more impact-focused businesses?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is, if you are looking into entrepreneurship, is really developing a competitive edge by increasing impact. So instead of going into it and saying, what can I do to make money? Shift that thinking to what or where do I have the capacity and the skill sets to impact change? And that is going to completely alter a lot of things. When you're just focusing on making money, and don't get me wrong, we need the funds, we need money. But when you shift your focus to figuring out, what can I do? What am I really good at that's going to impact change? What solutions can I provide? And that's the biggest piece. If you're not solving any problems, if you're not bringing any solutions to the table, what are you doing? What is the purpose of your business? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? I think sometimes people think entrepreneurship is just glorified and it's so fun and you're your own boss and you can do what you want to do. But It's a lot of work. It's a lot of highs. It's a lot of lows. And so if you know going into it what problem you're trying to solve, if you know how you are trying to impact your community or impact your industry or impact your family, that is going to help you go much further with your business. Another reason really quickly why I shifted from the solopreneur or the sole proprietorship to LLC was I have kids. And so in talking to someone, I realized I can't leave this business to them. You know, I am not creating a legacy for my family. And so that struck a chord in me. Like, yeah, this is great that I'm planning events and I'm working with the NBA, but what am I creating? What impact am I having on my family? You know, how am I creating generational wealth? That's a goal we all should have. And so really digging deep and getting clear on what problem you're solving is going to be key if you are looking to become an entrepreneur. And be patient, you know, show yourself some grace. It's not easy. There are days where you're like, man, this is amazing. I love it. And then there's days where you're on LinkedIn looking for a new job. So it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Somebody hire me. I quit. This is not life. And I've been there. Like, trust me, I've been there. And so, you know, you just have to stay the course. You really, really have to stay the course. If you are really into it, if your heart is into it, you will figure out a way to make it work. Surround yourself with people, like I said, that are smarter than you. And just always do that self-inventory. And you're going to change. You know, you're not going to be the same person you are when you first launched that business to many years from now. Like I said, my first year, I did nothing but weddings. Literally, I had a wedding a month for 5 straight months. And was completely wiped out. Literally ended up in the hospital 2 months later from exhaustion. That's not what God was calling me to do. And so you really, really, really have to get clear on, you know, what is your purpose? What are you trying to do? Entrepreneurship isn't for everyone, and that's okay. I think we make people feel like it's a bad thing if you're not an entrepreneur or if you're in the corporate or private or public sector. No, like it's not a bad thing. But you just have to figure out what's right for you.
That's so good. I'm inspired. I really love hearing the stories and journeys of other people. And, you know, thank you guys for engaging in the comments. One of the things that Gratitude Griot said, she said, thank you for the transparency. And I think, you know, we are all building, we are all learning daily. And so it's really encouraging and inspiring when we can hear the story of others. So thank you for just being able to share not only the highlights, but, you know, how you were able to navigate tough times, because we all need to know that, you know, where we are now is not the final destination.
Absolutely.
That we can keep going. And Gratitude Griot also asked, have you ever connected with Inglewood's Back to School Parade Committee?
I have not, but if you have a contact, I would welcome that. I have not connected with them.
Okay. And we will get your contact information when we're wrapping up. So thank you for that mention, Gratitude Griot. Tiffany Davis said, if you had endless resources at your disposal, what would be your dream event or initiative to plan?
Oh, wow. So I didn't even really talk a lot about this. So I actually want to do more sports events, which is why I sit on the board of Wise Chicago. My dream job, honestly, would be to continue doing work with larger scale, what they call experiential events. And so if you think of the draft, if you think of All-Star Weekend, anything that is really around the guest experience and creating a really dope experience for the guests, like that's where my heart is. And that's kind of where my focus is lying these days. The 2020 Perfect Vision campaign, again, is just like my heart. It's the community. It's what I love to do. But I would love to work with sporting events and entities, properties, brands to really produce some of those really cool events that you guys see and hear about. I was that person that when the NFL draft came to Chicago, I'm driving downtown and I'm like, I wonder who put that on. Like, I'm the nerd that's trying to figure out the person behind the scenes who put everything together, who was like, this is what we're going to do and this is what we need. That is me. And so that would be my dream. I actually got my certificate in sports marketing from Northwestern during COVID because I had so much time. I didn't have nothing else to do. And so that's kind of helping to propel me into that industry or that realm that I'm looking to go into.
I love that. Come on, leveling up those credentials during COVID. I'm so glad that you made this time work for you, for real. And just thank you again for this discussion. I mean, you challenged us, number one, to just take inventory of where God is leading us, to, recognize when there are shifts, to be honest with ourselves when, we need to pursue other areas of opportunity, and even just to stay the course when we know we're personally pulled or called to something, even if stuff starts falling apart. But even just leveling up the business, I love that you are continuing to grow as an entrepreneur and bringing more definition to your work and also making it more passion and purpose filled. Gratitude Griot said she will connect you with the organization. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Contact. So this is a great place for you to tell us how can we stay in touch with you and stay connected with you. And you may want to give your email as well, since we have some resources flowing.
Absolutely. So my email is events with an S at DinaiYelverton.com. And I think the spelling of my name should be on the screen, but it's events at DinaiYelverton.com. Website is DinaiYelverton.com. Like I said, we're going through a rebrand, so you'll start seeing some shifts from Undeniable Events to the UDE agency really soon. I'm on Instagram, I_am_Dinai. And again, Perfect Vision Campaign on social, perfectvisioncampaign.com. And all of the things. So please follow us, especially on the 2020 Perfect Vision campaign. I'm pretty responsive. So again, if there are any organizations or doctors that you can recommend, I will gladly accept that. The donate button is also on the website. Because I am funding the rest of this tour and making decisions on what happens next, and if this is something that I will launch again next year. And so your support and positive vibes and prayers are so much appreciated.
That is wonderful. Do you have any parting words for our community today?
I think the final thing I would say, just kind of wrapping it up, going back to, the title of impact versus income. Of course, we are all looking for ways to make money. But if you shift your thinking into how can I create impact, trust and believe that the money and the success will follow. Position yourself correctly going into it so that you're not operating in the wrong capacity. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work for someone in the corporate, private, or government sector, always lead with your heart, and really, really stay true to, your calling and what it is you have been called to do.
I love it, Dinai. Thank you so much for being with you this morning. Thank you all so much for joining, for engaging, and really hope that this conversation really moved you into action. And so just want to impress upon you that the Cowork and Connect series happens every Wednesday. So please join us for that. And you can visit www.walkerslegacy.com for the latest and the greatest activities from Walker's Legacy. And you all have a great day.
Bye. Thanks, Asia.
Thank you, Dinai.